Hello, everybody, and welcome to Man's Model Moments. Apologies for the late start. I had some PC issues which prevented this going as smoothly as it could, as in not smoothly at all. We just get some lighting kind of sorted here. So yeah, it is Windows, unfortunately. I couldn't get my keyboard to work at all. I tried restarting the PC and then realized this is a Logitech keyboard. It's a wireless keyboard. It can work on 3 different channels in case you have obviously different people using the same thing. And of course, it was on the wrong thing for the receiver. So it took me a while to work that out. So apologies for that. I'm just clearing my bench now of lots of individual track links from the other night when I was doing this. So it's coming along. It's taking much longer than I had hoped. It's taken longer, in fact, to do the amount of tracks I've done so far than to build the entirety and to build and paint the entirety of the actual vehicle. So yeah, interesting. Anyway, we're not here for vehicles tonight. So also, this. Can anybody guess what this is? This is for an upcoming video that was actually suggested by someone on chat. Yep, still working. So if anybody can guess what that is, I'll be very impressed. So let me just have a little look. Not kind of up with it at the moment. I'm going to take these off because they're really, well, they're too old for, I need a new prescription, really. But I can't see, my long vision is fine. It's as usual, when you get older, basically your eyes stiffen, the muscles and everything, so it's harder to focus. And my long vision's fine, but I can't see close up. So if I've got them on, I can't see properly for the screen here. Anyway, so scrolling right to top, we've got David Markey, Julian Hall, Steve T, Gremlins Modeling Mayhem, George Davies. Apologies if I repeat people's names. GNA Scale Model Apprentice. Can't wait. I love the XB70. Well, we're going there. Jaws. We have Richard Howie. And just scrolling down, Adrian Hook. To try and remember who I've said and who I haven't. Mario, good evening. Craig, welcome. And we've got a lot more people on than actually in the chat. If you're new here, feel free to say hello in the chat. Nobody bites here. It's a pretty friendly space. We don't really have room for I won't say rivet counters because there's a place for accuracy, but as Luke called them in FX and Chill last night, which unfortunately I couldn't attend, but I did watch back today. Arseholes. There's no room for arseholes here. Just trying to clear this as I'm doing this. I should have done all this before, but as always, other things get in the way. JP Gibbons. The XP70 is so fast, he's actually early. Not so sure about that one. That's me. John Alec, welcome. Good to see you. And Mark, good to see you. Adrian, I think I said hello already, but welcome if I didn't. And I think Massimo. Ciao, Massimo. Very happy to have an Italian visitor. I used to have a very good, I was going to say comrade, but colleague in Thermo, the Italian, the leader of the South region. I was North region, he was South. Really, really, really nice guy. Very much into his buffalo mozzarella. 98 degrees here today. That's about 37 degrees. That is too hot. It's been 25 degrees here. I think that's about as warm as I like it. And even then, too hot in the direct sun. So, Julian, yes, Windows does install needless data on the entire system. So I have my PC here has a 1 terabyte SSD as its operating system drive, and then I have an 8 terabyte partitioned drive, 4 2 terabyte drives for storage. It's still not enough. My PC downstairs only has the terabyte, and I need to upgrade. I don't have the money to upgrade, but I need at least a 2 terabyte SSD as its main drive. But yeah, hey ho. Once the divorce money finally comes through, I should be able to get that. Why did FX put the wrong decals for the Bulldog? Who knows? It could have been. 28 degrees in Mark's flat. Last day of heat in Yorkshire shouldn't get heat. It's grim up north. We all know that. World War II scale model Dave. Hello, welcome. Richard Howie. Well, so this is one of the things that I kind of don't really get with the FX release. It is a Bulldog Mark II, and obviously Barda's, or what? No, it is Mark II, isn't it? Douglas Barda's was a Mark IIA, but the differences between the 2 and the 2A are minimal, the exterior differences. It had a slightly higher power engine. They didn't generally fit the cowlings to, but they'd stopped fitting cowlings to a lot of the 2s as well, because 2 of the 3 out of the schemes in the box are like that. So again, unless you're an expert on Jupiter engines, you're not going to know the difference between the slight difference in the oil. I think it's the oil sumps on them. It wasn't tail, so the tail wheels and the different size tail wasn't introduced until I think 1933, which is well after Barda's accident. And then they standardized and actually refitted a lot of the 2s to bring them to 2A. So really, most of them are internal. So again, he is the reason that you would think of a Bulldog. If you would think of a Bulldog, that's the kind of thing, because it wasn't used in combat by the RAF, was used in combat by a few other air forces. Didn't have a particularly long run. You know, it's an interwar period where there were a lot of aircraft in the Silver Wings period. So yeah, it's an odd one, because you would have thought you'd want your biggest bang for your buck first. But maybe they're going to do a Mark IIA in the future, and we'll get Barda's then. We'll see. Okay. Nunu, welcome. Welcome, my friend. Good to see you. Anything above 21 degrees is grim. You see, again, I live in obviously, as you can probably tell, an old thatched cottage. Its walls are incredibly thick. So big stone blocks with a rubble poured in. No foundations. It takes a long time. It's got a lot of latent heat capacity. So it takes a long time for it to heat up. So it's here, it's been warm all day, 25 degrees, direct sun. It is a beautiful room temperature here. You know, it's great. In the winter, it's the same. It retains the heat, so it takes a long time to cool down. Disadvantage of both are when it does heat up or when it does cool down, then you're kind of stuck with it. So it narrows the sort of variations and flattens them out, which can be a good or a bad thing. But anyway, this is what we are here for this evening. This enormous box, which does have a whole bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, upside down. Has the pictures, a couple of pictures of the XB-70 there. Nice one. Here with the 3 parachutes. Another one of it on a runway. A bit. Now, is that touching down or taking off? I would have presumed taking off rather than touching down. If it's touching down, I would expect there to be sort of smoke coming from the wheels rather than anywhere else. I'm just going to try and move it around, make room for this damn thing because it is huge. So, massive, massive box. It is italeri cardstock, not particularly. It's thicker than normal, but it's still a bit wobbly. The lower one is the same, so it's not going to win any prizes for the box. But the pieces, and they are absolutely huge. These are the first. That's the nose fuselage pieces. Absolutely huge. And it does have this sort of passenger door to access, which kind of gives you the scale of the thing. And in that sense, it is kind of very Concorde-ski looking. You then have the longer fuselage pieces which go onto this to form this thing which barely fits on the screen there. Huge, huge thing. And then this is part of the wing. That's that is the starboard wing, both upper and lower pieces. The fit here is kind of aspirational, I would say. There are no locating lugs, as far as I can see. No locating lugs there, which is going to make for an interesting. Is that the right one? It's not the right one. It still doesn't have any locating lug. The one I'm trying to put on. There we go. Yeah. So it sort of has this, it sort of butt fits against that. I mean, it kind of wants to be where it is, but it's interesting approach. You do have some fairly big ejector pin marks here on the actual inside of the wing, which will need to be cleaned up. I also had shout out to somebody who contacted me via email through the channel email, who sent me a link to a whole bunch of pictures he had taken, a whole walk around of the XB-70 at its home in the USAF Air and Space Museum, which was very kind. So thank you very much for that. That's the other wing. So huge slabs of plastic. Detail is, I mean, you've got some nice detail here for where the engines go. It's not bad, you know. It's very italeri. It's raised panel lines for the main part, but very subtle ones here. It's Italieri's usual mix of sort of engraved pieces and slight, I would say, early Italieri, not early, mid maybe. So those are the wings. This is the fuselage. Okay, they just put them. This is the main fuselage piece, which is larger than most boat kits. Similarly, sort of put together. I mean, this is a really nice single casting, really. You do have some basic detail in the wheel well, not that you're going to see it. These wheel wells, really, considering the size of the aircraft, because obviously these are the, if you can see, let me just switch to the other camera and show you that. How do I add another camera? I thought I did. Where's my add camera piece? Extra camera. There we go. Here we go. Let's bring that in somewhere where it might actually be useful. So there you can see some of that is engraved detail. This, I believe, this slides back. Actually, those photos are really useful because this whole piece slides back. I think that is the bomb bay, which is a novel concept. But then, if you think about the 50s and 60s, they had some innovative solutions to how do you make a supersonic bomber. Because if you suddenly put out a couple of bomb bays into a supersonic airstream, that's a lot of stress, and you could just rip them right off. So you had, for instance, the Buccaneer with this rotary bomb bay. You had the Valkyrie, which basically shot its bombs out of the back. That was the initial design, which was really cool. And then you got this, which has this sliding assembly. Excuse me, hay fever. Not the best time of year for it. Anyway, so you can also see here you have, this is raised detail this time for what would be the main gear bay doors. But obviously, either when it's on the ground or when it's flying, those are closed. It's just these that are open if you actually have it on the ground. So considering the number of wheels and the size of the landing gear, they're quite diddy, those really. So that's the first bag. So I got this off eBay, I think, and it came with those pieces already out. It's a pretty nice decal sheet on this. I quite like that. Probably the wrong way around, isn't it? There we go. So if you're going to do one as the NASA one, because basically there are only two. There was the NASA one and the one that crashed, collided midair with its F-104 chase plane. So I expect those are nice because Italeri details usually done by Autograph. And then you have the remaining sprues. So these are the winglets, which are the size of most. I mean, that's like bigger than a Mirage 2000's wing in 1/72nd scale. You have all of the tires, which are weighted, which I thought was quite nice. This is one of the baffles. These are the enormous landing gear. I mean, they needed to be beefy, and they were. So you get two of those, obviously handed. You have this line of engines and nozzles for them, which I don't think that's a bad way, because if you look at the engines on the XB70, they do actually look pretty basic. They don't really have an awful lot of detail visible from outside. The ejection seats, these little clamshell ejection seats. So the when the crash happened, when the F104 went into the XB70 and caused the crash, the only person to survive was the pilot of the XB70. The co-pilot was killed, and the pilot, what's his name? Something White, who was, I was reading about him, incredible guy. He joined the American like air training crew or air army cadets kind of thing, and then joined up, went across in World War II, and flew all the way from D-Day to the end of the war in Mustangs, doing various escort and like strafing missions. He was badly injured, including he had his arm crushed by these rather unusual ejection seats, because obviously ejecting at supersonic speeds can be lethal. Basically, these had like a little clamshell, which basically protected you when you ejected. And obviously his arm got caught and crushed when he ejected. But he was the only one to survive. So these are the canards. Again, those are bigger than a lot of 1/72nd scale aircraft. Sorry, no, they're not the canards. What are those? Sorry, those, not the canards. The fins, the tail fins. These are the canards. These here. So I was thinking I may actually cut these, because they had a fixed piece and an aileron, effectively. So I may cut those, because you do see them a bit drooped on the ground. Now, whether that's because of long-term storage with loss of hydraulic pressure or something, I don't know. But we also have two positions. These for drooped, and these for straight with the winglets. And then this is the piece that goes over, that kind of points out before this. So that's one is under and one is over. And that's it. So it's actually a very basic kit at the heart of it. It doesn't have a lot of parts. What is that that's fallen off? Looks like. I don't know. Looks like it might be important. So, does it have the part count on it? I don't think it. Some italeri kits do. Italeri kits. No. But not many. Okay. I'm just going to remove that for a second. Just going back quickly to the chat. Nuni says, I thought the 32nd Cobra was big. Yeah. I want to see the 1/35th scale Sikorsky. Oh, new internet to got me in 1080p. I'm so sorry. I do need a beard trim and a haircut at the moment, so I look a bit COVID-y at the moment. So just going through chat. Oh dear. Just had a disastrous outcome, even with 3 layers of gloss varnish over AK3G paint of Vallejo putty. MOPW. PLW? 8 through the lot. Filled it with Zappa Gap medium CA glue. MOPLW. What's PLW? Can't think. Let me know. Well, I mean, what the Valkyrie has in length, the sort of Vulcan makes up for in breadth. You know, she's a big girl, but it does. I mean, it dwarfs the Blackbird. So it is a. I did mean the Vigilante. Yes, the Vigilante. I don't know what did I say? Something stupid, probably. Yeah, because the old Airfix kit, I think at one time, I think the original release actually had a nuclear bomb, because it was a nuclear bomber. That was that came out the back. I mean, they quickly abandoned the idea. It was never actually used, but it was tested. It did cause some problems. It could get clogged because you had basically a weight behind it on a sled. If you get a chance to read up about that, it's quite an interesting system, which caused problems. The XF-108, I believe that's called the Rapier, which, yeah, was designed to intercept Soviet supersonic bombers, but suffered the same sort of fate with rising prices on the project and essentially a switch on both sides over to ICBMs and SLBMs. The project both got canned, as a lot of these things do. Okay. I think I'm pretty much up to date. Steve, you can always ask off-topic questions, as you should know by watching any of my streams. Topics are kind of advisory rather than golden. You know, there are no hard and fast rules usually that we adhere to. Tend to hop about over all kinds of themes. So please do ask. And for the rest of the chat as well, apologies, I'm moving paper around at the moment, probably making myself illegibly inaudible, at least. Yeah, if you guys do have any questions, please do ask them in the chat. I'm not sure it's a good thing. Okay, Nunu, good to see you. Okay, so I can't decide on my next build between the Hobby Boss A6 Intruder I got from you or the Meng D9R Bulldozer. I mean, myself, I'd probably go the Intruder. But that's just me. Probably because one, a bulldozer doesn't really do it for me, and I know you've done a few tank builds recently, so maybe it's time for an aircraft. So, okay, yeah. Try not to let other people push your buttons. So, yeah, there are people that are like that. We have a particular neighbour. They're not really a neighbour; they're about 4 doors down, which here is quite a bit because they're all individual houses, and all quite old. But he objects to Pablo barking in the garden. Pablo is usually barking at other dogs barking, but he doesn't have a problem with the other dogs, just with Pablo. So that kind of pushes my buttons because it's like, look, the dogs. If it was constant all day, I could understand it, but it's not. It's anyway. Let's not focus on those people. Would enamel ruffle black mixed with thinner be good for a panel wash when a varnish had been applied? I've no experience really with the Revell enamels. You can certainly use enamel paints, thinned enamel paints as a wash. The great advantage to creating your own washes is you get to decide what the thickness is. I mean, obviously, you can buy panel washes like, I know John Alec uses Tamiya panel line wash. I use it. Tamiya panel line accent, I think it's actually called. I find it too strong. I think John Alec does, so I usually thin it down when I'm going to use it. But I tend to use my own anyway. I guess these are good. Excuse me. The big sneezes when they come. Medication one kind of suppresses them, but then when they come, they're big. Yeah, I tend to use my own because I tend not to like. I find black washes like the Tamiya panel line accent is too black, which sounds odd, but it's too stark, So I actually, my wash is a mix. I don't think I've got it here, but it's a mix of black and brown oil paints in thinners. So yeah. But as for how Revell paints work, I don't know specifically, but I can't imagine their formulation wouldn't allow you to do something like that. I mean, he gives as good as he gets, does Pablo? So, alrighty, let's crack on then. Maybe not. Maybe not. I may be painting it with something else. We will see. Okay, right. It's time to get this on, and then you won't have to see me. Just trying it. Why won't it do my picture-in-picture layout? That's so annoying. I've got all these different layouts. Okay. So now can I just swap these across? Yay! There we go. I really want this to be on the other side, though. Oh well. We will see how we go. Now, I've left the instructions for these downstairs, so bear with me a second and I will return. Okay. Apologies for that. Don't mention that I was annoyed at my computer. So I couldn't prepare properly. There's always something. Okay. So it's a little skew-if, isn't it? So these are the instructions. They are very traditionally old school italeri. Italeri. I will never be able to say that properly. I've learned what I've learned, and that's it. So we've already seen all the parts. Interestingly, this actually looks like they photographed the parts. It's very nice. It's 1990s. Oh, I didn't mention the transparencies. I think I might have taken them out. Yeah, you actually get two canopies. You get the normal one and the supersonic flight one. So if you wanted to do this model in supersonic flight, it's absolutely capable of doing that, which is quite nice, I think. But it's, I mean, it's pretty traditional in terms of the, there it goes. It is old school, though, because it's got this big fold out, pain in the arse instruction sheet, which I do not like. Now, in terms of finish on this, the pole is still up for this. The experimental B1B scheme, desert scheme, which if you haven't seen it, if you look up B1A experimental desert scheme, you can see what that looks like, was winning. The Southeast Asia scheme, which was used by quite a lot of American aircraft, was neck and neck with it and has overtaken it the last time I looked at it, which was a couple of hours ago. Just get rid of these. Oh no. Let's keep those on, because otherwise it makes me look like I'm at a campfire telling scary stories. But that poll is still open. I'll keep that open until I get to the end of this build. So if you want to vote on that, it's in the video description, so you can easily find it, or on the community post. So you hardly see anything of the interior anyway. Literally, if you didn't want to use this, you could basically put this in a piece of plastic out and spray it black, and you would see about the same as what you're going to see, because those windows are tiny. You know, for the best will in the world, you're not going to see a lot, but of course we won't do that. We will put it in. But I suspect most of the actual time of the build is going to be spent on doing the little pieces, and then waiting for big pieces to dry. So if you have any questions or comments on what I'm doing, or want me to answer something, just put in capital letters, as Junior has here. Big, nice capital letters, question or whatever. Question is a good one, because then it's easy to zoom in on it. Would you use a different color panel wash depending on location? Say a lighter one if the subject was in the desert. The easy answer to that is yes and no. So if you think what panel washes and panel lines in aircraft are, or are for, are not to represent actual panels on aircraft as they were in scale, which is what always gets me, where the rivet counting contingent are just like, oh, the panels were way off scale. It's like, that's not the point. That's not what they're there for. At least certainly on a 72nd or 48th. If you get into 1/24th scale, then maybe it gets to that. But they are there for us to put washes in to fool our eyes into perceiving more depth than there is. So it's to create an illusion. So rather than location, I tend to vary the panel wash I'm using by color. Depends what color I'm washing over. So if I'm doing a primarily white aircraft, for instance, I'll use something more like the Tamiya gray panel line washing, because you don't generally see the very dark, very harsh shadows unless you've got a big gap on a white aircraft. So, but again, if you want to add a little bit more accent to it, you can dilute that wash or dilute a black wash to give a little bit more emphasis, or if it's a little bit too much, you can dilute it again. So I think somebody else actually, yeah. So Daniel said, washes are nailing the right mixture. So absolutely. So if something is too harsh, you can dial it back and then build it up, which is, for me, preferable than putting a very harsh wash down and then not really being able to do much about it, especially if you've got engraved panel lines. Why does StreamYard keep coming up with connection? Connection is unstable. I am on a wired gigabyte internet fiber. Computers bug the hell out of me. If only they did what we wanted them to, what they should do, just what they say on the tin. Anyway, let's get some smally bits. You can pick up these kits off eBay in the UK, about £40, around about £40 mark, 40, 42. I've seen them, funny enough, in Italy. I've seen them in the US. They are still fairly abundant. You can still buy it from Italeri, I believe, as well, directly. So this isn't a rare kit. So if you like what you see in this, it's easy to get yourself one. Now, I was thinking, with this whole what if theme of this, it might be an interesting thing to look at. Well, what if the B-70 did happen, and what if, like a lot of other programs, like the B-1 and stuff, the B-1A was conceived as that Mark II supersonic bomber, but able to fit other missions as well, and then it morphed into the B-2. So not the B-2, the B-1B, which had was primarily for low-level penetration. The top speed was lowered, could carry different munitions and stuff. But what if the same thing had happened to the B-70? And what if it had actually been used as a platform for a B-2 type aircraft? And I was thinking, actually, if you took... Let me try something here, because these wings, the big wing sections, are actually supposed to lock together. I think you're actually supposed to put these together first. I say that, they kind of don't. Okay, you're just supposed to glue them together, I think, so they really lock. So you got this big thing, right? What if you actually, and that's very flat, top of that, with a slight curve up, other than this piece, of course, which you'd have to remove. But what if you flip that? So that was the bottom of the aircraft. Right. Now you have all these sort of panels here, which would actually shield the engines from the ground. Still trying to get this thing together. These pieces would be the top. This would then be the top of the fuselage. I'm not doing this well at all. Essentially, what if you kind of flip the whole thing upside down? And you had kind of this thing going like this, and then have the intakes, instead of them being like just in the front there, they will kind of move more to the side. You fold this down and then had this kind of more at the front. You've kind of got like a stealth B-70, B-80 maybe. I thought that would be quite fun. And I thought, yeah, but the italeri kit's a big kit to start cutting up, right? Maybe a 144 would be a better way to do that. And I looked at I think it's Great Wall Hobby, maybe, just a 144 kit. It's like twice the price, or like 150% of the price. And I thought, what's the point? Academy did, I think, a 1/300 scale. But that's long out of production, so it'd be a matter of finding that to be able to do that. But I thought making that would kind of fit in with the whole, what if piece. Yeah, and you could have the winglets like permanently at a downward angle. And you could make the forward canards a bit more stealthy. Chock them in. Anyway, I'm getting distracted, as it's very easy for me to do. There's the main cockpit tub. That's the instrument panel. And again, because the aircraft still exists, they did all of the flights. They did a fair few flights as well. You don't need to see me with sexy dogs, so let me Okay, can you hear me now? You guys hear me? Ah, you can. Okay, good, good, good. I think it was because I'd removed the other screen from the stage rather than just not showing it. StreamYard is pedantic that way, so apologise for that. I wasn't saying anything of any particular note other than how terrible the fit of this was, and that there were some fairly prominent ejector pin marks, which I can now show you on these pieces. So you see there's a ejector pin mark here. There is a similar one on this side. And the worst one is not so bad on this one, but it's here at the back, which actually was preventing the two fitting on the other one. Yeah, it's a little, yeah, you can see it on here actually. If that's going to focus on that. So yeah, these ejector seats are interesting. And at risk of repeating myself, you can see this sort of clamshell mechanism that would come down and up and surround the pilot, or crush his arm, as they did in reality. So I kind of am starting again, David, with this because fortunately it has two ejector seats, so you know I can say the same things about this. So the fit is loose, I would say, and you get a really nice fit on the bottom and on the back. The two areas that you will not see no matter what. Unfortunately, the fit on the rest of the part, the fit on the top isn't bad. Yeah, that's okay. The fit inside, oops, light just fell off. The fit inside is pretty bad. That does not align, not at all. It's actually a step. You can see there. That's a terrible fit. But again, as I say, I'm not going to be too precious about this because you will see none of it. And they just sort of push fit in place. So there's no, despite there being a hole on the bottom, there is no locating pin. They just kind of go in till you think they're vaguely right. At the right angle. But it's kind of like anyone's guess, really. These were exactly the same number. Yet the parts do look slightly different. I'm actually going to try, see if I can try if there's a better fit between the other two pairs. See if we get a better fit by using they're exactly the same, 31, 31, 32, 32. But they're obviously not the same. Oh no, that's much worse. Put it back how it was, Alex. It was right the first time. Good enough. Oh dear. Right. We are going to need some of this. Some of the old sprue goo. You see, I quite like italeri kits. You've just got to. This could do with some more TT in there. That's a little bit too. A bit too thick. Yeah, the thing is with the italeri is, you're not going to get of a certain age, right? I'm not talking about some of the more recent kits. I can't tell you in all faith because I haven't done a very modern italeri kit, and the Lacore 132nd scale kit looks lovely. But kits of this age, like 90s kits, early noughties kits from Italeri, they do kits of interesting subjects, right? And they don't cost the earth. They generally were pretty reasonable. The newer stuff is pretty, is on the upper end of the spectrum in terms of price. I think they are at risk of putting themselves out of the market because they're not, certainly. People complain about Airfix, but Italeri aren't at an Airfix level, I don't feel, at the moment. But they're trying to charge higher prices, which is, it's a bold strategy. Okay. Not ideal, but let's loosen that up a little bit. See if we can get rid of the majority of that awful whole canyon, really. I think the ideal way to do this would be really to use some plasticard just cemented over the top. But we're going to do it this way. I put quite a lot in here because I want to try and even out the differences between the two sides somewhat. Really, I would use a thinner sprue goo for this, ideally, because that kind of self-levels a little bit better. But I have what I have. So we'll go with that. Say, I'm not going to be too precious about it because you won't see it. It's just to kind of prevent any inquiring eyes seeing a big dark line. There we go. And then just use a little bit of liquid cement, just kind of go over, smooth it out. Good enough for rock and roll. Oh, good night, Julian. If you've not already gone, apologies if I missed you. So it's an interesting subject, actually. The cost of what people will spend on a model to what people will spend on, aftermarket and paints and everything. So the total cost, if you like, concept that a lot of companies started looking at, really certainly in the 90s and 2000s. One of the things that a lot of companies, because obviously I've been in commercial, the companies I was working for, we were selling instruments and solutions to problems. And a lot of people would just be like, yeah, I want to buy, X instrument to analyze whatever catecholamines or whatever. And of course, a lot of diagnostics. So we worked a lot with the NHS and tenders, which, is all that usual race for the bottom. And we were beaten in one by Roche, the pharmacy, the instruments section, the diagnostics part of Roche, not the drug side, which is the big side which makes all the money. The instrument side. And they won the tender on basically the way the NHS did this tender, was the winner scores the maximum number of points in a category, and then everybody else scores a percentage of what that winning bid was. So if you put your bid was £100, and they had put £50, then your score would be half of theirs because yours is twice as much. So what they did is they skewed it statistically by offering each of their machines for a penny. And these machines were worth about £80,000, which meant, of course, the next person on the tender, which was us on cost, received 0 points. And they won on the basis of that, despite the fact we beat them in every other area. So they did blind testing, all the scientific staff, the diagnostics and stuff. We won on every single one of those. Software was about 50-50. We got about the same points as because software is very, unless it's terrible software, it's all about the same. And then they queered the deal by having this statistical anomaly thing, by charging a penny for instruments. But of course, all of the maintenance and what was having to be bought with them and stuff, that all came in, but that wasn't considered. The total cost of ownership wasn't considered. So they won it on that. And the NHS stood by it, because normally what they do in those sort of situations is say, look, obviously this was an oversight, this shouldn't have happened, we'll rerun the tender. But they didn't. They stood by it. Even though we were the incumbent, all of the scientists wanted it. We produced better diagnostic results. And we wonder why the NHS is in the state it's in. But anyway, the point of all of that was that a lot of companies, to avoid that sort of thing, looked at the total cost of ownership. So not just what are you going to sell me the instrument at, but how much is this going to cost me over 10 years of use? So Hewlett-Packard with a printer, for instance, their model is essentially the printer is a giveaway and you make the money on the consumables. Well, on a 10-year cost of ownership analysis, that model doesn't hold up, right? Because the customer sees how much the replacement ink is and like, well, actually, you're way more expensive, than if I buy this, I don't know, whatever Canon printer, which costs twice as much, but actually the ink is, a tenth of the price or whatever. So it's one of those things we don't tend to consider as models. We tend to just look at the price of the kit. Like, oh, that's a cheap kit. But then, like you say, you don't consider, well, because it's a cheap kit and it doesn't have the detail you want, then you buy a photo etch kit for it. Sometimes for more than the kit was. And then you buy some resin wheels and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've always been a kind of total cost of ownership person. Even when I'm buying cars, I'm just like, well, yeah, this looks like a good deal, but that engine consumption is going to cost us a lot, and actually your main cost of a car over its lifetime is the fuel. Okay, so we have some seats with kind of some really lumpy looking, but at least not divided cushions. Hi, Tuggers. So the thing is with, and this comes back to what I was saying in my video, right, about the paint by numbers thing, because it says it's got 50 different colors, but does it really have 50 different colors? I would doubt that, and most of those colors are going to be grays, white, gold gray, dark gray, black. You could buy a black and a white and mix everything, so I don't think that's really, the paint cost versus the kit is accurate. And as Gary says here, obviously paint's used over several kits. You buy some red and some yellow paint, or some red and some white to do some, the ejection handles or whatever. You're not going to use an entire pot on one kit, so you're going to use that for future kits. So yes, you do still have to buy it, but that one paint pot is going to be used over many different kits. So you can kind of over egg the pudding, as it were, on an analysis like that. But again, that's if you are looking at buying specific paints. And going back to that video, the getting away from the paint by numbers thing. You don't need to do that. You know, it's this mindset which I've never really quite fully understood. I must admit, that you have to have the right shade, or you have to have something. I get that. I want to buy this color because it's convenient for me to do that. It's going to be worth it, whatever. But if I've already got a bunch of, different aircraft grays, and this kit tells me that I'm going to have to buy a slightly different shade, which I might not even be able to distinguish between by eye, I feel no compulsion to do that. But some people do. I mean, if you think about it, an artist buys their paints based on what they want to do, but they will mix and blend and create what effects they want as they go, and they'll do that on every project. And they'll probably have particular paints that they like because of the way they look, because of their tonality, because of the way they mix, and all of those other different things. But they never go and just buy a paint to apply to something just because of that paint, or because somebody has told them that this is the color that should be. So I thought this was going to be nice and quick and easy. This part, I was wrong. So, color actually are those. So, E, F, and B. I'm guessing B is black, B is black, E, light ghost grey, F is red. Red? Oh my god. Okay. Red cushions. To guess how many kits have you filed away that you started but didn't finish? It goes, I'll tell you, Steve, it goes into the hundreds. As I said, one of the reasons I started the channel was exactly that reason, to finish projects. So yeah, I do have hundreds of kits that are started and are not finished. The good news is that having a channel, it wouldn't take much for me to get some of those out and get them finished and something on them. It's just keep getting caught up with doing silly things like this. So there is, you can see there, some detail cast onto the instrument panel itself. How much of that, even with the decal on, will come across? Well, I'll tell you how much will be seen. None. It's actually quite a nice decal for the instrument panel. It's quite nice. And if you look at the, I should put a link actually to the Air Force Museum, because these panels, it's very analog. It's a very analog machine of its time, I sat in a Tu-22M Ukrainian one at React one year. That was the same. Thousands and thousands of switches. I mean, Ukrainians being brave didn't just start with the invasion. For them to have flown that thing over was brave. My God, it looked like a death trap. Soviet tech. Yeah, it's not a cockpit that's going to be winning many prizes, I can tell you that. The control yokes, though, look pretty accurate. I mean, for 72nd scale, obviously. I almost made a mistake there. Because they are these very airliner type, yoke type, as you might expect with such a large aircraft. Looks like two halves of that mold have been slightly misaligned there. Again, not that something that small matters. Okay, so let's put these in. Yeah, they kind of don't fit. I hope this isn't indicative of how the main parts are going to fit together. Otherwise, this is going to be a slightly less enjoyable build than I thought. Okay. Oh. So this. Okay. Wow. There's not a lot of room there. But it's that's tight. Yeah. Interesting. So all of the interior of the cockpit is light grey. Pretty much actually the same as the plastic. And then the control panel is black. The yokes are black. Everything else is grey. So put all those aside for the moment. Let's move on to step 2. That is pretty nice, actually. Shibdub. Didn't realize they included pre-bending rigs for the photo etch. That's pretty cool. So this does have a pretty focus, a pretty big seam line on it, as you can probably see across there. Now this is going to be more visible, so it will be a little more anal about making this disappear. So I do tend to scrape my mold lines like this, especially where there's a lot of differing levels and detail, because you can't get sandpaper in effectively. Also, clearly there has been some misalignment of the jig that you can see. All right, the decal sheet as a backing there, so I can focus a little better. You can see there's a misalignment of the jig slightly, so this requires some fairly severe correction, which a modeling knife is better at than sanding generally. Not all the time, but generally. So this is probably the stage of any kit, removing these kind of lines is the stage on a kit I like least. It's because it's kind of essential if you want things to look nice, but it's boring. I mean, sanding is boring, but generally you can see, you're doing big areas and you can see quite big improvements, and this is just fiddly and a pain in the ass. You've got all different angles that you have to come at this from to be able to get that. You've got fractions of a millimeter here that I'm just actually slicing off. When I say fractions, not small fractions of a millimeter, like 0.4 millimeters, and scraping back across. So yeah, not the most fun I've ever had with a kit. Fortunately, Italy's plastic is quite soft, so it does make it an easier process. If you were trying to do this with a Tacom kit, you would be going through blades like nobody's business. So if a kit is really bad in this area, this is where I'd consider a resin alternative. This sort of detail, I mean, not for landing gear, really, because resin is not a very suitable material generally to bear that weight, because it's quite brittle. Sometimes it's okay. Depends on the size of the aircraft. So for something this size, not really. Yeah, I mean, you can see there's these kind of over lugs on these. Again, it's not picking that up very well. Let's try to focus on what's down below. Can you see there? Maybe on the large one, it's easier to see the difference between these two sides. I think the difference with PE is that for the great majority of kits, it's optional, right? It's something that you buy as an extra. Now, I get that, especially Chinese manufacturers often put it in as part of the kit. Often it's an alternative to a plastic part, which is much better. Where it's not, then you have the choice of not buying the kit, right? But PE, you can choose to work with or not, generally. Whereas if you've got seams on something like this, I mean, your choice is to leave them, but then they will be visible and they don't look nice. Or to work on them, we'll buy a replacement, which, it's not great when you've already bought something which is supposed to be fit for purpose. I mean, that now is okay. I'm not going to worry too much more about it, because it does have some little molded on, which I think are supposed to be cables and stuff. I'll probably add some of the lead wire I have to actually make those look better. Hopefully detract from or take the eye away from any nasty pieces of the mold lines here. So the other thing, and Steve mentions, so once you've actually scraped it, I mean, obviously sanding it is then probably, where you want to be if you want to get them really clean. But a bit of Tamiya thin goes a long way, because obviously what you're doing is melting the surface of the plastic with this. So you're just softening down any scrape marks, the prior sanding line, just kind of smoothing that surface. So you're chemically polishing it effectively. Just don't handle it once you've done it, because big fingerprints on it will look even worse. Oh, okay. Is it? It's that sports ball thing again. England 0-0 with Slovenia. Yeah, you see, I used to watch the Euros. Um, when I had a family, because it's something that you can do as a family. It kind of you can do exciting things around it and things. Um, I'm really not into watching sports generally. It doesn't entertain me watching 20-old man child, overpaid, insufferable people kick a pig's bladder around a field for 90 minutes. There's nothing for me. I know it does for some people, but not for me. And to each his own, John. Like, if it works for you, I'm not going to diss you for it, unless you try to get me into it, in which case I would, because I wouldn't. I can get excited about a match. I do watch important England games, if you want to call them important, when they happen, but they're few and far between, right? But trying to maintain that for any length of time, if you want me to be excited about a team in a league, it's like, nah. It loses the appeal for me. So these nasty seams are on quite a few of these small parts, it seems, which would, make sense if it is a slight misalignment of the molds. No, actually, was thinking, because obviously it would be ideal. This kit would be ideal for some 3D printed extras, right? Some new resin details, a cockpit and stuff. But because it's quite an unusual aircraft, it's unlikely to have any STL files that people have done for it. I tried to find some Su-27 exhaust nozzles the other day, which you would have thought would have been fairly easy to find, and you can't. If anybody does know of any, let me know. I mean, on the football bit, John, I mean, I kind of get it with the other sports that you have, that football is becoming popular, because, oh my God, American football is dull. I say that as somebody who has been to an American football game, who has watched it on TV, because it was the only thing that was on when we used to come back from the club when I was at university. But there they don't show you the whole game, or at least if you're drunk, you don't have to pay attention. I was amazed, though, going to an American football game, at how little attention the actual people at the game show. I mean, we didn't turn up until like the second quarter, like midway through the second quarter, because like we had these tickets. It was the Chicago Bears and the Toronto Maple Leafs, those two mountains of American football, playing in Toronto. The guy who had the tickets, we went to his apartment, which actually overlooked the stadium. It was one of the two big skyrise buildings. next to it. And the time was going on. I'm like, shouldn't we be going? It's like, oh, it's okay. We'll wait for the game to start. We'll go. I'm just like, you wait for the game to start? That would never happen at a soccer match. I'd say soccer because they wouldn't understand football. And then when it was obvious, in the fourth quarter, how far behind the Maple Leafs were, people just started leaving. It was just like, again, that would never happen in the UK. Leaving before the end of the game. It's just like, but there's still a chance. Okay, so it's weird because it sort of goes in an angle. Okay. Okay. That's weird, but okay. It's weird that the scissor linkage kind of goes off to one side. But hey, there we go. So that was just to put part 35 onto 34. We had to do all that cleanup and then put that on. Now the front tires of the XB, excuse me, XB-70 were, of course, aluminium impregnated. Or I guess it'd say aluminum impregnated. But the back tires weren't. So it means the front tires are silver and the back tires are not. Okay, 49 and 52. Okay. 49 of these. And these are all 52. I'm not sure I spotted any differences. 49s. See, that isn't very. So I thought the 49 here was referring to these two. It's not, it's referring to these two. They're not very well labeled. The only reason I know is because the hubs are different. So I was thinking, what is different between them? And that is it. So those are the 49s. That's actually a 51. Put that aside for a moment. So 49, 49. I need 2 52s. I think you're quite right, Frank. The thing is, we just get too massively excited about, the chance of winning, the hope of 66. It's just like we don't invest in our home football teams. If you think in 1966, most of the players in the England team were in English Major League Football at the top levels. And we don't do that now because we get all the best players. The big teams like Manchester United have the money to get the best players from anywhere, which means we're not developing the home talent in the same way. So it's an inevitable consequence. We have some good players, but do we have some of the best players? And when you ask that question, I think the answer is probably no. I mean, to be honest, I don't think I could name a current England player. I mean, Southgate was a player the last time I was really watching, which kind of gives you an idea of how long it's been. So these do not actually really align. If you can quite see that, but the tabs there are not really helping the fit of the part at all. I may just actually cut them off. I think they are more of a hindrance there. Which, by the way, that is an okay thing to do, right? I think a lot of people kind of get worried that they're not doing it right or something. But sometimes, the alignment tabs, holes, pins, whatever, are doing you a disservice, and it's better to cut them off if you can get a better fit by yourself, which I think I've just achieved there. In fact, now that I've done that one, it was making this one look bad. I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. Off with their heads. And make sure it gets out because I don't want it rattling around in there. Yeah, that's much better. They do, however, have little semicircular holes for this, which is nice because obviously they are weighted and that allows the weighting to come in the right place. Although, wow, they're deep. And that fit is not tight. You see, I think because we are spoiled now in a lot of ways with CAD designed and CNC machined tools, we expect tolerances to be very tight. if you think of when this was made and how this was made, this is actually not a bad kit for how it was designed, and how old it is now. So I'm always a little willing to forgive kits of this sort of age. Ones that were made traditionally without computers, and they may have had some issues, but broadly speaking, they fit. Of course, what it does have is a lot of ejector pin marks on this back piece. You see all those little dots all the way along is an ejector pin mark. Raised, proud of the surface, which I'm not even sure how that happens. If anybody knows how an ejector pin mark becomes, I guess it's concave isn't the right word, but proud rather than indented. I'd love to know. Some of these are just almost like a mark on the surface, not actually really raised. That one's actually gone across that, which is annoying. And this one goes across this too. I mean, the design of that, whoever put those in, the design, yeah, we want an ejector pin just there. Really? So apologies everyone, this has been a bit of a dull build session, I would say, from my perspective, because there's been a lot of removal of ejector pin marks, seam lines, filling of gaps, and not an awful lot of building. I think that is probably accurately reflecting the work required on this kit. So if you're thinking of building one of these, if you have one in the stash, I know some people said they did, just be aware you are going to need to dedicate some time to cleaning up these little areas. If you're bothered about these things, of course, you don't have to spend the time at all, but most people would like to have their model's appearance be as good as possible. So as you probably saw, or may have saw with that, putting Tamiya on gets rid of all the little like scrapey bits that don't necessarily want to come off, because they kind of just get dissolved. Well, the Maple Leafs are a hockey team. Yeah, well, I don't know. This was a while ago. I don't know whether they've changed or I just got the name wrong. Pretty sure it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Well, if you could tell us what their American football team was called, that would be great. Oh, that's good. I'm glad people are enjoying it. Oh, you've so Hobby Time's already built one. Flash sitting warped. Mine does not appear to be warped. Fingers crossed. I don't want to jinx it. Okay, let's put those to one side a second. That one kind of just a bit of a break from doing this. I'm not going to put the landing gear bay door on because that'll be a different color. The one that just goes on here. What color is it saying these are? GGA. A is going to be aluminium. I imagine G is white. No, stainless steel. So I imagine in active service, these would have been painted white, as pretty much all American undercarriage and gear bays are. So I'm probably going to do them white. I think that'll also make the aluminium tires pop a little bit more. A bit more contrast between those two things. These things, the landing gear units, are massive. So again, I will put a link in the video description after this stream. For you to be able to check out the Aerospace Museum's website. Because these things are like, it's like little trolleys. The wheels are on. Quite solid little things. Oh, I see. They've. Oh, that's stupid. Why have they done that? Okay, no, 41, 43. Okay. And that is 42 and 44. These two pieces are supposed to go together. Wow. Okay. That is one of the worst fitting undercarriage pieces I think I've ever encountered. It can't be, surely. No, it is. Wow. I mean, these are that bad that I just have difficulty believing that they're meant to be actually pieces that go together. Again, the main problem is they have all these ejector pin marks here across the piece, which are actually preventing it going together. And there are no, like zero, alignment tabs. I'd have expected these would have been, you know, one side would have been pins and one side would have been holes. Nope. Nothing. That's kind of trash. I would not have expected that. I really would not have expected that. I don't think I've ever seen that in a kit of, you know, let's say the last 30 years from a mainstream manufacturer. I mean, like if you go to like PM model or something, then yeah. But even then, you know, you kind of expect that because you're paying like, you know, a few pounds for those kits. I'm really not a fan of these big ejector pin marks everywhere. As if anybody would be, but I mean, they are really a pain in the ass. Okay, ejector pin marks removed. It kind of fits. Kinda. You just have to align it. Well, interesting. Maybe it heard me about the wheel. That's bad. That is really bad. I think that's the worst I've seen in a mainstream kit ever. You know, before the stream, I was thinking maybe I'll get another of these and do that stealth idea. The chances of that are diminishing, like beyond any sort of level of probability now. Maybe I'll look for that Academy 1300 scale kit. I mean, the fit on this actually isn't that bad once you've got the parts to to a place where they can actually be joined together. I think they would benefit by clamping. And actually, even if a little crocodile clip would have enough pressure just to hold it. Probably. Probably. But man, that was bad. Really bad. Surprisingly bad. I think that's probably the worst I've ever seen in any italeri kit. Let's get the other one over with before I lose the will. I see we've gone beyond 10 o'clock, but I was late. I want to get this horrible landing gear done out of the way so I don't have to look at it again. Well, I'll have to look at it, but I don't have to try and clean off, check the pin marks. And oh, I've broken. Ah, that's what that piece was in the box. It's part of the landing gear. That's this strut that's broken off. Okay. So I have a small repair job to do. That piece didn't seem as bad as the others. This piece is. that one is over, well, that's about 1 millimeter proud. It is substantial. That is quite something. There's more flash on this piece though. A lot more flash. I will, of course, have to do more on this because it's going to need a lot of this flash tidying up these seams, making sure that they are as invisible as possible. I mean, you probably won't see too much of the upper part of the landing gear, but the lower piece is a fairly prominent feature of the aircraft. I mean, yeah, not something you're going to be particularly staring at, I guess, but it just bugs me that it's so bad. But you can see they are kind of like little trolleys. They're so thick. So that isn't simplification on part of the kit. That is, they are actually that thick. So this is where references, are good, really helpful, because you can think, have they simplified that? They filled that in? No, that is just, it was just solid metal. I mean, it was a massive aircraft, so obviously weighed a massive amount. So it needed really chunky landing gear. Should have taken those off before I glued them together, but anyhow. Right, I kind of do want to put that ouch, missing piece on. Oh yeah, now I've seen it. It's obvious. It's obviously one of those little arms. So I'm not concerned really about getting it exactly correct. I just want it to be in the right ballpark. I mean, that got quite misaligned as well. And there's some play in these, so that looks pretty good actually. In terms of vague alignment rather than the assembly looks really good. It's because it doesn't. It will need some work still. There's quite a big gap there, look. Gap there. There we go. Okay, at least we got something to work with on that. I will not probably do that on stream. Okay. Oh dear. Well, I think it shows that I mean, it's always the way, isn't it? It's the draw and the Swiss style, I think it's called, the scoring system. You know, you are only the best in that group, but I don't think it actually waters down quality overall, because it doesn't matter how fluky you are to get to, say, the semi-final. The teams that are good are going to get to the semi-final, semi-finals, and then they're going to, if you got through on flukes, they're going to annihilate you. So, kind of, you know, yeah, you could get to that stage, but you know, on some luck, but no further. Alrighty, I think that is going to be us for this evening. Switch cams and turn these off. There we go. Again, perception of color. Look how different I looked with those lights on. Well, I don't know. I've beaten a really boring soccer match. I'm not sure that's much of an accolade, but thank you all anyway very much for joining in and watching me battle the small pieces of Italeri kit. For the next one, I'll probably do the next one on Thursday, actually, because I kind of want to crack through this fairly rapidly. So on the way there, I'm probably going to do the cleanup of those landing gears and stuff. You know, do some painting in the cockpit, and then next time I can show you putting the cockpit in, getting those fuselage pieces together, and the actual building of the aircraft, which I think is going to be the more interesting piece. On the basis of tonight's, I think interesting should be interesting. And I can also arrange a variety of clamps, because I think to need them. So yeah, same time next match, everybody. Is hobby time, as nicely said. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me this Tuesday, and hopefully see you in a little while. Cheers, guys. Bye.